Hi folks, this is Jason. Hope you're okay today. I just want to talk about the Dunning and Kruger effect. There are these atheists going around today that if you argue for Christianity or argue against them, whatever it is, evolution, they'll throw out these words. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect. What that is to try and neutralize people who are challenging the status quo, trying to neutralize ordinary people from having a voice, and I'm going to explain what that is and how that works. Before I do, let's listen to a couple of clips. Here's the Dunning-Kruger effect, explained by John Cleese, the actor, and you'll get a bit of a feel of what the Dunning-Kruger effect is.
I think the problem with people like this is that they are so stupid that they have no idea how stupid they are. You see, if you're very, very stupid, how can you possibly realize that you're very, very stupid? You'd have to be relatively intelligent to realize how stupid you are. There's a wonderful bit of research by a guy called David Dunning at Cornell, who's a friend of mine, I'm proud to say, who's pointed out that in order to know how good you are at something, it requires exactly the same skills as it does to be good at that thing in the first place, which means, and this is terribly funny, that if you're absolutely no good at something at all, then you lack exactly the skills that you need to know that you're absolutely no good at it. And this explains not just Hollywood, but almost the entirety of Fox News.
So that was John Cleese explaining the Kruger effect, and now we'll just put someone who gives it a bit more intellectual flesh to the bones.
I wanted to do some videos about some scientific papers that have caught my eye over the years. This one's about something that's been termed the Dunning-Kruger effect, after its authors Justin Kruger and David Dunning. I was prompted to do this video after seeing a comment on a YouTube video called The Truth About Sodomites. Charming title, isn't it? Overbrimming with love. The comment in question here was a reply to somebody else's comment, it wasn't addressed at me. But it just captured such an irony that it took my attention. It goes something like this. Sodomites are the filth of society, as 6,000 years of history has shown. The Bible supports this fact. You are so diluted and brainwashed, you think theories and opinions are fact. So this guy is accusing someone of thinking opinion is fact, but he's just said the Bible supports the fact that Sodomites have been the filth of society for 6,000 years. Calling people filth is inherently a subjective value judgment, an opinion, very clearly not a fact, which would be objective and indisputable. How ironic that this zealot demonstrates the exact confusion between opinion and fact that he falsely accuses others of. This also tallies with the bemusing experience some of us have had in that time of coming away from a debate on whatever subject, having taken the time and care to logically counter every argument, only to have your opponent act as if their arguments are still perfectly intact. It's kind of like all their chess pieces are gone, their king is rolling hideously around on its side, and they're still thinking they hold the stronger position. Have you ever experienced anything like this? Odds are, if you ever participate in debate, especially online, you have. And so we come to the Kruger and Dunning paper, entitled Unskilled and Unaware of It. Fantastic time. They start off recounting the story of one MacArthur Wheeler, who was quickly arrested after robbing 2 Pittsburgh banks without a hint of a disguise. When he saw the surveillance tapes that later convicted him, he was incredulous and said, "But I wore the juice." Turned out he believed rubbing lemon juice in your face rendered you invisible to video cameras. Kruger and Dunning were interested in this cavernous gap between somebody's self-assessed competence and their actual competence. So they constructed a series of tests to help give some explanations to this phenomenon. They argued that people who are incompetent suffer 2 consequences. 1, their incompetence leads them to make poor choices. But 2, and this is the crux, their incompetence prevents them from realising they're making poor choices.
I'll stop there because I got to think of copyright. So that's the Kruger effect. What are my responses to it? First of all, I think it's anti-democratic. That's what I think. I think it kind of like he's trying to say, look, only the intelligent people in a particular area of expertise can actually comment whether they're competent or not. So basically, it's taken control out of ordinary people's hands and put it into the hands of the competent intellectual elite. And I disagree with that. You don't have to know something very, very well in order to not train yourself to be competent in that area and to be able to critique other people in that area. So, for example, in the area of philosophy, it might be on the freedom of the will. There might be competent philosophers who can talk about that, but someone who's a layperson wants to get in on the act and perhaps write a book or write an article. It's not beyond the ability of someone who's an ordinary person to research and to write a book critiquing even competent philosophers on the freedom of the will. And also, if you look at the history of philosophy and science, it's actually often those who have been not part of the establishment, who have been lay people in their area but developed a philosophy or developed their science and actually challenged the status quo. So, for example, in the area of philosophy, some of the greatest philosophers that we've ever known were never really professional philosophers. Professional philosophy only came in when the academy began to structure learning. So, for example, Hobbes, Locke, Berkeley, etc. Great philosophers, but you wouldn't say that they were actually professional philosophers, yet they were as competent and as able as any philosopher in history. So that's just an example. Also, the ideas of Paulo Freire, where he talks about democracy and the importance of education in the democratization of knowledge, and that is to empower ordinary people to be able to take control of their lives, that they can do their own research, and that you don't need a professional class to be telling ordinary people what to do. That if you give them the tools and the resources, that they can do their own research and develop their own educational methods. Now, you could say, well, in the education, in areas of education, they need the experts. They are not competent to judge how we should have an education. But Paulo Freire would say, well, actually, the ordinary people know their context better than the professional educators, and they know how to access their own stories, their own resources within their community. So they are just as competent and able to develop and do research for education for their community. In other words, they don't need the experts. But that's all the ideas of Paulo Freire with the democratization of knowledge, where you don't necessarily say that the experts have got all the answers. So that's just two areas. The third area is Foucault, the French philosopher, who did research on institutions and noticed that institutions play power games and try to manipulate people. And this kind of rhetoric that's come from Kruger and Dunning, it seems to me it kind of buttresses the intellectual elite who want to maintain power and control over ordinary people. The atheists have picked this Dunning and Kruger up, and then they've applied it to creationists, and and in their own way, it's them trying to play a power game, because it's basically saying we're intelligent, and because we're intelligent, we have the ability to assess whether we're competent or not. You are so stupid as creationists. Don't you realise the Dunning and Kruger effect, that you haven't even got the ability to assess whether you're stupid or not? and therefore you've neutralised a voice in public discourse. And it's a power game, and it's a very deceitful power game, because it should be based on whether you consider the evidence or not, and not on smearing a group of people with the Dunning and Kruger effect. So perceived. So what we see here is the atheist lacking a lot of intellectual firepower, not being aware of Foucault, not being aware of Paulo Freire, not being aware of the weaknesses of this position as well as the strengths. For there is some truth to what Dunning and Kruger have said, because, for example, I wouldn't have the competence to assess if I was given the job of looking after a construction site, but I was away from the construction site, far away. It would be difficult for me to assess what would be needed on the construction site. So in a sense, there is some element of truth to Dunning and Kruger. But as I pointed out with Paulo Freire and Foucault, and we could use many other philosophical and other examples to show that they are not correct in what they say. So where do we go with this? Basically, as atheists, stop trying to be an intellectual elite and just let ordinary people be ordinary people, and allow ordinary people to challenge the status quo, okay? Because they are more than competent to do so. And we have communities, and communities can help us to see whether we're going right or wrong. We have our own resources, our own thinking, and we can share resources and thinking. So there is no excuse for anybody to live in the Dunning and Kruger effect if we're exchanging dialogue and discourse. And this is the problem with the evolutionist and the atheist, is they will not engage in proper dialogue and discussion. For in a sense, they are the competent ones, and they are the only ones who can competently assess whether they and anybody else is competent, and so therefore they neutralise, castrate any opposition that might challenge them. I've so loved this video because in a way it's just shown the ignorance of atheists who would propound this kind of Dunning and Kruger nonsense against creationists. And it was a pleasure just to introduce you to Foucault, Paulo Freire, and there could be many, many other things that I could have brought. And I just hope this moronic nonsense that atheists keep pumping out all the time to try to neutralise public discourse and anybody who might challenge the status quo, I just hope that one day true reason and rationality will reign, and true education, true dialogue, and true sharing of public space. Thank you. This is Jason in Coming Out of Atheism, who has thoroughly enjoyed this video of debunking Kruger and Dunning. Take care and God bless you. And I will put some resources for and against this position that I have espoused. And you know what? The atheists never do that. They never indulge in scholarship. God bless you.